The PBS game show Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego is now 25 years old. What was once a show whose main goal was to help kids learn about geography in a time in which most of them didn't know where Russia or the Atlantic Ocean was, became an iconic phenomenon still remembered by millions to this day. Whether it be that memorable theme song sung by the band Rockapella, the dynamic interaction between host Greg Lee and the Chief, played by Lynn Thigpen, or the crazy over-the-top antics that the vile leader, Carmen Sandiego, and her henchmen would be pursuing him. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego was a show that was both educational and fun. Continuing with the Carmen Sandiego retrospective, we'll be doing a very special episode of From Pilot to Final Product, where we'll be comparing the pilots to the TV series to see what similarities and changes occurred. Now, I know what you're thinking. Up to this point, I've been looking at Nickelodeon pilots, but I feel that today was the perfect opportunity to look back on one of my favorite childhood shows. Also, did you say pilots? Yes, I did. There are, in fact, 2 pilots that were presented in Where in the World. I'll be jumping back to back on both of them, but I'm going to be focusing on the first. With the exception of a different henchman that stole different items and a few additional skits, they're more or less pretty much the same. With that said, let's begin today's episode of From Pilot to Final Product. The first pilot, titled The Purloined Pooch, starts off with a typical episode of Carmen Sandiego around the earlier seasons. The Chief would be introducing the gumshoes and the host, Greg Lee. As we can see here, Greg is wearing a red blazer, beige pants, brown shoes, and a hat that he would be wearing throughout the entire show without taking it off. In earlier episodes, he will be wearing that or a green blazer, but for the most part, he will be wearing a blue blazer, beige pants, brown shoes, and he would take off his hat whenever he entered on stage. The Chief is wearing a different outfit as well. She has a green and yellow suit, as opposed to the red and yellow suit that she'll be wearing throughout the series. Even in the first few episodes, Rockapella would be wearing street clothes, until later on they had a consistent set of clothes. She gives her usual introduction about who the henchman of the day is and what item they stole. In the first pilot, Patty Larceny stole a Lhasa Alpo that won an East African dog show. Wow, a dog? That's it? Considering that Patty Larceny would steal things from the Library of Congress, the Declaration of Independence, the Rosetta Stone, a Hawaiian island, and Williamsburg, Virginia, a small dog is pretty weak. While she did steal another dog in the episode Little Dog Gone, that was a dog statue, and a big one at that. So she upped her ante since then. In the second pilot, The Disoriented Express, Double Trouble stole the TGV train from Chicago, Illinois. Now that sounds like something a Carmen Sandiego henchman would steal. With the scoop on the henchman complete, Greg states on the rules of the game, and this is where it differs from the rest of the series.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start you off with 125 Acme Crime Bucks. Travel to any place will cost you 10 crime bucks, but if you go to the wrong place, it'll cost you an additional 5 crime bucks. And the 2 of you that have the highest score at the end of this round will proceed to the next round. Got it?
Got it.
Now you might be wondering, wait, what is this? You lose points even if you get an answer right? You lose more points if you go to the wrong place? And you have to get a high score to move on? This is really confusing.
Start y'all off with 50 Acme Crime Bucks. Anytime you answer a question correctly, we'll give you 10 more crime bucks. And the 2 of you with the highest score at the end of this round will then proceed to the next round, okay?
Now, I may know what they're trying to do here. These are more or less the rules from the original PC games of Carmen Sandiego, where the gumshoe only has a short amount of time to find the stolen item, find out who stole the item, get a warrant, and locate and capture Carmen to complete the game. When a gumshoe goes to the wrong location, they would lose more time and would have to go to the correct location to gain their momentum and gather more clues right before time runs out. It seemed that the creators weren't 100% sure on the right balance to make not only a show based off of a well-known series of computer games about geography, but how to adapt it into a game show. While there were animated series based on video games like Pac-Man, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and Captain and the Game Master, as well as game shows based off of board games such as Scrabble, Pictionary, and Monopoly, there were no game shows based off of a video game series, and they had no foundation to lean upon. So for that, I have to give them a little bit of credit. But looking back on it, yeah, it's very odd. We then continue where there would be clues given to the gumshoes by informants, cartoon cutouts, and a special celebrity guest consisting of Penn and Teller. Just like in the series, there would be 3 choices on where the henchmen went. The clues would be repeated, and the gumshoes would give off their answer. In the very first pilot, at the very first question to where Patty went, the sound effect of the answer being correct is slightly different. Throughout the rest of the questions in the pilot, as well as every question in the second pilot, the sound effect of the answer being correct will be the same one that would play out throughout the rest of the series.
That's the answer we're looking for. Nice job.
Why was the first question sound effect different from the others? I have no idea. During the middle of both of the pilots, the chief would call Craig into her office to get updates on how the search is going. When Greg walks to the office, the sign stating that it's the chief's office is different than what the series would present. In fact, it would look that way in the early episodes of the first season. Greg would be recapping events about the different informants giving the clues to the henchmen's locations.
I want results, Greg. I want you to find Patty. I want you to bring back that pooch. Lhasa or Opso, what's his name?
Yeah.
If you get Patty, she will lead us to Carmen Sandiego, and that's what I want. Now report, Buster.
Okay, well, we had a talking yak for a while, which kind of threw us for a little bit.
All right, wait. Greg, I want results now. No double trouble yet. No TGV. We've got to find double trouble. The 2 of them will lead us to Carmen. Now, report, Buster.
Okay, we had this guy with a train in his chest.
A train in his chest.
And he was falling around.
Now,
This scene is completely pointless since the audience has seen these play out moments ago. You could argue about Greg recounting the clues that the informant stated earlier whenever he asks a question, but I feel that this helps not only the gumshoes out in case they get overwhelmed with all the information that's stated in a short notice, but it would also help the audience out if they were participating at home. It's a good thing that this never became a recurring thing, and instead we would have more funny moments where Greg and the Chief would play out a lot more humorous scenarios.
Hey, Chief, what's up?
oh, Greg, look what's new from Acme Lab. It's called the
Acme's Press-On Fingerprints of the Fabulously Famous. Yeah, I got one of those for my last birthday.
No, that's not possible, Greg. This is the only one of its kind.
Chief, I got this down at the mall at the Detective Toy Hut for about $8.95. What'd you pay for yours?
$35 million, not counting 6 years of research and development.
Ah, ouch. Well, I bet yours has a longer warranty, though, huh? All right, now, you see, Chief, by pressing on replicas of famous people's fingerprints, you can instantly do whatever that famous person could do. For example, okay, these are quarterback Joe Montana's fingerprints. Watch this.
And now I'm supposed to believe that you can now throw a football like Joe Montana.
Just say hike, buddy.
Hike. Wow!
Thank you very much.
Oh, let me try that. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. Oh.
Yeah.
Heavyweight Evander Holyfield.
I gotta get going, Chief.
I like this kit.
After Greg finishes talking to the chief, the first pilot showcases a ransom note that Patty wrote to the owners of the dog demanding more money to be sent to her current location.
If it isn't too much trouble, please bring 100 million lira to the Via della Scrofa. I'll be enjoying fettuccine at Alfredo's. If I don't get the money by the time they serve the cappuccino, Apso will become a little doggone. Molto grazia. I mean, thank you so very much. Ciao.
Nothing like a polite threat.
This is the first and only time in the entire series this has happened, since the skit that plays out after the chief's meeting would lead up to a phone tap where Carmen Sandiego would be talking to the henchman to go to a new location. The only exception to this will be around season 5, where after Greg talks to the chief, the gumshoes would meet Greg at the alley participating in a training exercise where they'll be finding a flag, and the first person who finds it get a chance to answer what it is first and gain some more Acme crime bucks. Then it would lead up to the phone tap. A few more clues later, and then we would lead up to the final clue of the round where the gumshoes have to risk points to see if they can get enough to move to the next round. Again, the numbers are completely different to what the series would be.
I want to remind you that this is now the final clue of this round, which means you have to decide how much you want to risk. If you're right, we'll add that amount to your score. If you're not right, we'll take it away from your score. You can risk 0, 5, 10, 15, or 20 crime bucks. Now, it is now time, though, for the final clue of this round, which means now you have to decide how much you want to risk. If you're right, we'll add that amount to your score. If you're not right, we'll subtract it from your score. You can risk 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 Acme crime bucks.
Skipping to the second round, the two remaining gumshoes would learn about the henchman's current location by the chief with a photo recon showcasing different landmarks. Then they will be led up to the board where the landmarks would be listed for the gumshoes to guess. There are two different things to note when seeing both of the pilots. The first notable thing is that when the gumshoes are trying to locate the crook, loot, and warrant in a single turn, they can do it in any order that they choose. In the series, the order goes like this: loot, warrant, and crook. Even in the PC games, you can't arrest the crook or Carmen without a warrant. So I'm glad that they put things in perspective in the TV series. Plus, in both of the pilots, this goes incredibly quick.
Federal Center.
Federal Center.
Wrigley Field.
There's the warrant. Wrigley Field. Okay, so you found the warrant. Nice job, Jackie. Ted, your turn.
Midwest Stock Exchange.
Stock Exchange. There it is. Jackie, your turn.
Okay, O'Hare Airport.
O'Hare Airport.
Federal Center.
What's the second one? Federal Center.
And Oak Street Beach.
And Oak Street Beach. Oh, she did it. Wonderful job, Jackie.
In the series, it's a pretty tense part of the show that requires both timing and strategy to remember where each item was. The second thing to note is that there are kids sitting where ordinarily there would be suitcases at. It would be this way in the few episodes of the first season. As soon as the gumshoes got the 3 pieces on the board, they won the second round, see the crook go to jail, and would immediately go to the map where the chief would tell them the locations that Carmen may have went. In the series, the gumshoe would pull on the rope to see them go to jail. They would write on what location they would like to go to if they won the game. They would receive a phone call with the henchman on the other line telling them where Carmen has went. In the first season's case, it will be a random item like a sneaker. But then later seasons, it will be a regular telephone. Then the chief would list the locations, and then they would go to the map. We now reach our final round, where Greg takes the last gumshoe to the map to find 7 different locations where Carmen went. Later on in the series, it will be changed to 8. In both of the pilots, they went to the United States, which will be later replaced by North America around Season 2, and they would use flags to mark the locations. In the TV series, they use markers with rotating flashing red lights. Even the sound effects on what the markers would make if the answer was right or wrong is different in the pilots and a few episodes of Season 1.
Now, if you're right, you'll hear this sound. But if you're wrong, you'll hear this sound.
When you are right, you will hear the sound. But if by chance you're wrong, you'll hear this sound.
Huh. Funny, because it sounds very similar to the sound effect that Double Dare used.
Ear to ear, trying to pop an egg into a bowl. Whoever has the smoothest step will tangle into the lead. No, keep going. We still have more balloons down there. Yes, we still haven't found what the... Oh! No, we didn't find it. My goodness!
Anyway, as the game starts, the timer and locations are seen as white and would be in the earlier seasons until it will be shown as yellow. When the clock starts, Greg will be giving clues on the locations before he would reveal what the location is.
Dwight Eisenhower in the home of J.R. Ewing. Carmen went to Texas. Nicknamed the Keystone State. Its capital city is Harrisburg. Carmen went to Pennsylvania. Yeah.
He would do this a handful of times in the first season, and around Season 2 onward, he would just flat out say where Carmen's at.
On your mark, get set, go. Carmen with the Dublin, Ireland. Ireland, go, buddy, go. Yeah, that's good. St. Petersburg, Russia. Yeah. Italy, Salerno, Italy. Yeah.
Greg stating the clues drags out the time much faster and makes the kids lose more often. If they don't know the location, they have to listen to the clues to get a clearer indication on where Carmen is. Even in the first pilot, the gumshoe barely won by a second in the last location. When the show is over, they ended off by saying,
Hit it, fellas!
as opposed to saying,
Rockapella!
where they would sing the theme song. Now here's a strange occurrence that only happened in the first pilot. They sung an additional song.
2, 3, 4. Back to back. Belly to belly. Yes, my friends. Back to back. Belly to belly, say, huh.
It was a zombie jamboree, took place in the New York cemetery. It was a zombie jamboree, took place in the New York cemetery. Zombies from all parts of the island. Some of them were great Calypsonians. Since the season was carnival, oh, they got together in Bacchanal.
This has nothing to do with anything and is absolutely unnecessary. The show's over. The item is returned to the location, both of the crooks are captured, and the final round is completed. They would sing the song again in the very first episode of the series, and at least they put a clue into that, so it had a lot more context as to why the song would be there. It's a cool song, and it's always nice to hear Rockapella sing, but it goes on for 3 minutes, and it has no purpose whatsoever. Then they sing the theme song, and the credits roll. The credits show the henchmen stealing names from the credits as well as showing stock pictures of landmarks that the crooks would be stealing, which again would not happen in the rest of the series. Finally, the chief gives her last words of wisdom and our first pilot concludes. The second pilot, on the other hand, continues with Greg and the chief's office, where they compliment on how well the gumshoes did and would like to recruit more. He asks the chief for some money and approaches the audience asking questions about which country the money came from. If the kid got it right, he wins the money, but he could exchange it for a Carmen Sandiego sweater. Greg presents more items, and whoever won, the kid would win a sweater. This would happen occasionally in the first season, where a few audience members would be called to the chief's office to answer a question. If they got it right, they won a t-shirt. If they got it wrong, they received an atlas. While later on in the series, the TV viewers could get a chance to win a t-shirt by writing 5 items that were stolen in a postcard and send it to a P.O. box, I missed the audience interactions. I wish there were more. I felt like it got the kids to participate in the games just as much as the contestants. But I guess I could understand why they didn't do it as much. They either didn't have enough time, or they didn't have enough t-shirts and atlases to give. Whenever they air the pilots on TV as regular episodes, there will be a promptu that would showcase before the episode aired.
Sandiego is different, but the game is the same.
No, lady, there's a lot more than just the scoring system. Sure, the core gameplay is the same, but when looking back at both of the pilots, there are so many differences compared to the game show, it's mind-boggling. The different outfits, the sound effects, the second round where the items can be found out of order, the lack of a phone tap in the first pilot, the crooks automatically going to jail, no phone calls, flags instead of markers, and the final word from Greg calling out to Rockapella. It seemed that as the show went on, the creators and writers were able to remove what didn't work around the later part of the first season, and around season 2 they found their niche. It would continue to improve with each season, adding more things to what the show already had to make it better. Watching the original pilots is very jarring to see, and is not a recommendation to check out unless you want to see where it all began. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego is still a very fun game show to look back on. There are so many interesting facts about the different parts of the world that even as an adult I didn't know about. The presentation is over the top and goofy, but it's still a lot of fun. It can be corny at times, but you can't deny that it'll put a smile on your face when you're done watching it. The interactions with Greg and the Chief are very entertaining, and the performances by Rockapella are spectacular. If you haven't seen the show, or you haven't in a while, then I highly recommend that you check it out.
Well, she sneaks around the world from India to Carolina. She's a sticky-fingered filcher from Berlin down to Belize. She'll take you for a ride on a slow boat to China. Tell me, where in the world is
Carmen Sandiego?
Steal their soul in South Korea, making nutty cooks right on from the Red Sea to Greenland. They'll be singing the blues. Well, they never Arkansas her steal. The meat come from the jungle. Tell me,
where in the world is
Carmen Sandiego. She go from Nashville to Norway, out there to Zimbabwe, Chicago to Czechoslovakia, and back. Well, she'll ransack back.